Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's session on false positive mitigation, where we'll share insider tips and best practices. I'm Marissa Love, Customer and Partner Marketing Manager for Spirion. And before I make introductions and we get started, I'll quickly run through a few housekeeping notes. Kyle, can you forward?
Yep.
So we will be recording this webinar just to let everyone know, and we'll send a replay after it. If you're having any problems, check your computer's audio or send us a chat. And then we'd also like to take questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to use the chat, and we encourage as many questions as you have. Just a quick insight onto what we do here on these tips and tricks webinars. These are held once a month, and we're covering information on our sensitive data manager and really how you can be a heavy user in here and just make sure you're managing your time efficiently. And again, we want to hear what's on your mind. So if you have a topic you'd like to cover, please let us know. You can pop that into the chat as well. So I'd like to introduce our host and Spirion subject matter rockstar, Kyle. He'll be leading you through the webinar along with Sandra Elliott, our Director of Education, who'll be fielding your questions via the chat feature. And again, please ask as many questions as you have. Thank you. Kyle, I'll hand this over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So today what we're going to be covering is false positive mitigation. And I have a brief slide deck to show you. So what we're going to first talk about is understanding accuracy. And then we're going to talk about 4 different methods to mitigate false positives. And then majority of this webinar will be focused on a demonstration where I'm going to do a live demonstration and walk you through the configurations and methodologies and where you might use it to mitigate false positives. So the first thing we want to talk about though is accuracy. So when I work with clients on a pretty regular basis, this is always a conversation that comes up. So where we would like to get you, our goal is always to get you above like a 95 or 98% accuracy rate, but it's important you understand first off what an accuracy rate is. So a lot of times, the very first time we pull a report for a client during implementations, they'll look at it and they'll say, well, half of this data is false positives, so we have like a 50% accuracy rate at this point. And while I know that can be a little bit frustrating in the beginning, that's not entirely true. So the thing you need to keep in mind is that if you were searching 100 files and 10 of those files got flagged as sensitive, so they were returned back to the console as results, you reviewed those 10 results and you found out, hey, 5 of these results are false positives. Your accuracy rate at that point is actually 95% because we had searched 100 files. So each file we searched, we made a decision, does it have sensitive data or does it not? And so we're kind of sorting it into that. And ultimately, it's just important you understand that so that you can set expectations properly when you're talking to your teams about what accuracy rate and what we can do to do that. So generally within 3 searches, if you're implementing these tweaks, we can get you above a 95% accuracy rate. So just remember you're starting with the total files searched versus the total files flagged. It's important to set the proper expectations and realize that although we all want 100% accuracy, that it's just not going to be realistic in most cases. So we'll move on to the next slide. So the 4 different methods that I'm going to show you are how to utilize the global ignore lists and global exclusions. Then we're also going to talk about how to do any fine optimizations. And then if you're using sensitive data definitions, we're going to talk about that. And realistically, all 4 of these different methodologies should be utilized when you're handling things like false positives. So we'll go there. All right, so I'm going to switch over my screen and we're going to hop right into the live demonstration portion of this. So give me one moment. So you should see on my screen at this point a Spirion console, and this is like after we've just run a search. We got all our results here. But the first thing we'd want to do is go through after each search happens and start mitigating some of the false positives or the things that we don't believe are true positives. So I've created a very simple report right here in Excel, and we'll hop back into the console in a second. But what this is going to allow us to do is to kind of play around with the data so that we can see it, view it, and then go through basically implementing each one of these different methodologies as we kind of go. So what we're going to do to start off with is kind of review a file and see if it's a false positive, and then we're going to try to basically make it so that this file doesn't come up on the next search. So we can open up one of these files, and in this case, that's a true positive. But if we know that it's a demo data file, what's one way we could handle this? So the first way that we're going to talk about is using the global ignore lists and why we'd use that and when we'd use different global ignore lists. So a global ignore list in our console is relatively easy to set up. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your Spirion console, and you're going to go to the admin tab. Once you click there, you're going to click on the left-hand side in the menu, the global ignore lists. And if you don't already have these set up, you can create one. So you can just hit create. And the first one we're going to talk about is global ignore matches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the type from file hashes to matches, and we're going to talk about where this is useful and why we might use this. So the global ignore list for matches, essentially, let's imagine for a moment that we saw a number in a file, and let's say it was our company telephone number. So we'll kind of pull this up real quick, and we'll take a look at this loans document. And this is really useful. So like if you have a company phone number, obviously you're probably not really interested in documents that contain your organization or your company's telephone number. So what you can do if it comes up in a result, like let's say we were searching for telephone numbers and this file came up, we can take this phone number and we can add it to our global ignore list just by clicking add and going like that. So that way we can still use our telephone anyfind definition and try to find telephone numbers, but if it comes across this number, it won't return as a match under telephone. So I can go right here and I can say, all right, so it's going to be underneath telephone number. And if you want, the other option is we can change this to pattern. And what pattern allows you to do is make this a regular expression. So you might add something like this in here where you're saying, yeah, I realize that there could be a dash in between these digits, but sometimes it's not going to have the dash, or it could be a dot, right? Or a number of different things. We could say, all the different formats of how this phone number we think it might present itself. And we might say that, it could be a dot in between it or something else like that. But the whole thing is that this allows us more flexibility so that when the Spirion agent reads a file and it sees a pattern with these numbers in it, it's going to not flag as a positive match. So this can be really helpful. It's also a little dangerous because you want to make sure that you're only doing this to data types that make sense. So telephone number is a great data type where it makes sense. The other ones that you might want to use are personal address. It's a good idea to add your company's personal address to the global ignore match list if you don't really care about documents that have your company's address in it. Social security numbers, I'd be really concerned if you were to add like a social security number underneath here, because you have to remember that sometimes it's context. So if you ignored a true social, well, a number that came up in a document that, let's say, we'll go back to our kind of test set and I'll kind of explain. So let's imagine instead of it saying SSN right here, it said part number. If we added this number, because we can look at this and we can say, yep, that's definitely not a social security number. Those are all part numbers. If we add this number to the global ignore match list though, if this number shows up in a real social security number document, then it won't flag as a match. So it can create false negatives, which are really, really bad. So be careful how you're using global ignore match, but this is kind of an easy example of how to do that. The next list that we're going to create is a global ignore location list. And we'll flip the type on this one
Kyle,
to,
as you're building that, I just had a question pop up. There's two tabs on what you were building there, data and permissions. Somebody asked what the permissions was for.
oh yeah. So the permissions, that's a great question. So permissions allows you to assign the ability to modify these lists to specific users in your console.
Oh,
So when you're setting up roles and permissions and you're giving people the ability to log into the console, remember that you might not want every user who's logging in ability to modify your global ignore lists or
yeah,
things
that
like
makes
that.
sense.
So
Thank
super
you.
helpful. Yeah, not a problem. Great question.
Sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
No, you're good. So for the location list, you kind of can use this a little differently. Typically, I mean, if you have a location that you know is not a one that you want to return, then absolutely you can add that. But typically what you'd use this list for is we'd go to the results screen and we might say, all right, well, that file that we were just looking at, which was right here in our report, we'll pull this up and we'll say, okay, so this match right here was a false positive. So we can go back to our console and we might filter on that location. So we'll go here and we'll say contains, and we'll go ahead and paste the name of the file in there. And I can see, all right, it's all on this file. And what I can do is select any one of the matches. It doesn't really matter which one. And I can say, hey, this file, it's not really pertinent. It's not important to, it's not a real social security number. There aren't real sensitive data elements in here. So I can go to the globally ignore button right here. And I can say this location. And I can say to the existing global ignore list. And it will ask me to select the list. And it's my global ignore location. I'm just going to hit OK. And that makes it so that the next time that the endpoint or the agent search this location, it's not going to come up as a match again. So that can be really helpful. Now realize there's a limitation here because sometimes people see these two options and they're like, well, I'm just going to try to handle all my false positives using those two strategies. There's some limitations here. So the first one is when you're ignoring the match location, if somebody was to take that file and move it to a different directory on their machine or on the server or wherever you're searching, then obviously the location has changed. So that file will come back as a false positive again, and it'll be kind of a never-ending battle if you only choose to handle false positives through your global ignore list. So we can work on a couple other ways and strategies that might be better. This is really good though for like one-off ones where it's hard to like come up with something easy to kind of mitigate that false positive. So we'll come back to that in a second. But the next thing we're going to talk about, I'll show you real quick. You can see on our global ignore location list, this location shows up. It's also important that if you are the Spirion operator, that you are auditing this list on a kind of a regular basis and making sure that people aren't adding things that they shouldn't. So taking a look at that. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is mitigating false positives by optimizing the any-find definitions. So this is a pretty popular way to do it. So this is useful if you are using a lot of any-find definitions in your searching. If you go to the base system policy in your console, so this should be the one that all your endpoints are associated to. So these are the global settings that affect every single search that you're doing. And you go underneath settings and identities. What you're going to be able to do if you open these is typically you're using this in your scheduled task policy and you're enabling the any finds. But what we're going to focus on is the any find option under each one of these recognizers. So every single one of the any find definitions that come out of box, they all have this option, any find. And this is where you can optimize your different out of the box any find definition. So social security number is a pretty popular one that everybody searches for. And these are two settings that we can use to kind of optimize our the way that the recognizers work. So this one's an important one. Allow SSNs to be considered matches even if they are 7 or 8 digits. So we all kind of know that, hey, social security numbers are all 9 digits long. If you were implemented by our professional services team, this is set on by default. And the reason is because when we search an Excel file, I'll pull up that same loans document we've been working with. Trailing zeros actually don't appear. So you could put a number in like 003 and we could say dash, I'll put a real number there, and 9487. So let's pretend this is a social. The second I hit enter, what you would notice if we had this set to general is that a lot of these, a lot of times the trailing zeros will disappear, and they didn't in this case. So that's awesome. But in spreadsheets and if they're CSV in different formats, the trailing zeros will disappear, which is why we set that to allow for 7 or 8 digit social security numbers. I've had a lot of clients though, when they search financial data, the first thing that I'll tell them to do is, hey, we probably should turn this off, because if you look at a financial data spreadsheet where there's lots of budgets and lots of different numbers on the page, if you have that setting enabled, it's going to throw a tremendous amount of false positives. So you can easily get rid of a lot of false positives by setting this from allow to do not allow, if you would like. The other one that's pretty popular is allow for trailing punctuation. So we have it as a professional service team set to allow. And the reason is this, is so there's pros and cons to doing this. Realize that if documents are being OCR'd, so there's no readable text on the document, so that a lot of times with the OCR functionality, the optical character recognition functionality, it's not perfect. So sometimes it'll add like weird characters at the end. And if you allow for trailing punctuation to be there, then when you're searching OCR documents or picture files or things like that, you have a better chance of catching the things that matter. So this is something, again, there's a pro and a con. The pro to this is that you're going to get less false positives if you set it to do not allow. The con is you do run the risk of having false negatives. So keep that in mind. This is an important setting. Other ones that you might be interested in, and other ways that you can actually modify your any-find definitions, is you can use negative keywords. So we can say things like, if we enable this option, so this is under any-find USSN. Let's say we looked at that loans document and we said, if we see the words part number in the document, it's pretty unlikely that phrase, part number, is going to also, that same document's going to have a social security number in it. So we can eliminate these matches by just going like this and going custom negative keywords. And we can add this keyword in there like so. One thing to keep in mind with keywords though is they are case sensitive. So it's not my favorite way to handle false positives by doing the negative keywords, but it is a way that I've seen clients do it that have been successful. So just something I wanted to share. If you have questions on the formatting of this, you can go to the explanation tab and it's going to show you, and it's going to say, hey, you need to enter it 1 per line. So this is another way we could say part number, or a lot of times financial terms are really great to add to this. So you could say, if you see the words budget, if you see the words P&L loss or something like that, PL loss, or forecasting, those might be good examples of things that you would want to add to this list. But the downside to it is that it is case sensitive. So if it said forecasting in the document and it wasn't all capitalized like that, then it wouldn't be caught. So this can be a little tiring, and again, kind of has some limitations, but it's a way to do it. So we can use that.
That's really
Uh,
interesting, Kyle, because somebody, as you were doing this, asked a question about invoice numbers showing up as social security numbers. So I made sure to point out exactly what you were doing there. But as you go through, if you can talk about some of those other ways that you suggested,
Yeah,
we've got at least 2 customers online that have that exact issue. So,
perfect. So invoice numbers, I really like that one because that's going to kind of uh, get, I'm trying to think of the word. That's going to definitely help us transition into the next strategy, but I want to focus a couple more on a couple more settings that I just want to point out and highlight to people so that they kind of understand. Um, One of the ones is require the keyword, require the digit or the social security number to be near the keyword SSN. That's an important one that we have enabled by default if you're using Spirion ProServe best practice policies. Some other things that might be interesting to you are under credit card. This is where you can enable different types of credit cards to be found. So the nice part about setting it up in your base system policy is the fact that it will persist across all searches. So once you
mm,
make this one change, it's going to basically happen for every other search that you're running. So if you don't believe you have MasterCards or if you verified your company doesn't take MasterCards, you could turn that off and different things like that. So you get less false positives on credit cards and your social security numbers. So different things. Each one of these, like I said, has their own list of different tweaks that you can do. But the most popular ones that I typically see clients searching for are like social security number, credit card number. They might use bank account number, driver's license, and so forth. So the
and
other, oh, go
I
ahead.
have one more question in the social security number area. An eagle-eyed watcher saw that there's a field for minimum required USSN, but not for SSN. I think USSN is the same as social security number, but I'm not 100% sure.
Um,
So,
so yeah, minimum required number of unformatted SSNs required in a location. So
oh,
whenever I don't
U
know what the
stands for
setting,
unformatted,
yeah,
unformatted social security number.
yep.
Okay,
So basically it's allowing you to specify that how many are found at a location before the location is considered to be a match underneath that. So
okay.
we have so many settings in our platform. So just a quick tip for you is if you ever are curious about the setting, use the explain tab. It helps a lot to kind of clarify a lot of what these different settings do, and it's just built-in help for you. So you can take a look at that. But hopefully that
Okay.
answers your question as far as what this one does.
Yeah, they were asking actually what Social Security, if there's a minimum required for Social Security number that they could set as well.
So that's a great question. And what we would do in that case is that actually leads perfectly as well into my next
Haha,
example. So
excellent.
perfect.
I'll hush and let you go.
No, no worries. So, and these are great questions. So please keep asking them if you have questions as I'm kind of going through this. So the next thing that the other way that we would handle different false positives and things like that are underneath our admin screen. And this is by far the way that when I'm doing an implementation, the way that I leverage false positive mitigation the most. And I use sensitive data definitions a lot to do that. So the benefits of using a sensitive data definition is it allows me to easily address each recognizer that I'm using in an implementation. So let's take something like SSN. And the question, there's a couple questions, so I'll try to address them in sequence as I receive them. So, or maybe I'll work backwards. So if you wanted it to set it so that you needed at least like, let's say, hey, 4 socials or something to validate as a match under social security number, it's super easy to go and create a sensitive data definition for social security number. And all it needs to be is one line. And if you wanted to add in, hey, there's a minimum required in order for it to be a match, you could basically set that right here. And we could set it to, I don't know, 10 or 4 or any number you want. It's important that you'd want to set it to unique matches because obviously if the same social security number is appearing in the page 10 times, I'm questioning on whether or not that's even a social security number because there's not a lot of forms that would have an individual social on it 10 different times. So um, if you flip it to unique, that means that each time it sees it, it has to be a different number, essentially. So we can handle keywords and things like that using this same idea, and that's kind of what I want to bring you to next. So let's say, for example, we'll pull up that same file that we've been kind of looking at, the loans file. And we'll use this same example where we have part number, it appears in it, and we'll kind of pretend that this is not a real social. So what we can do is we can say, all right, we'll select that keyword phrase, if you will, and I'm going to create another regular expression. Now, a regular expression can seem a little daunting, but the truth of the matter is it can be also very simple. So we can say SSN, and we're going to say negative keyword list. And then we'll put regex at the end of it so that we know not to use this on its own in a search. So I can literally just go like this, copy, paste. And the benefits of having it as a regular expression data type is a couple things. The first thing is that if I want to add flexibility for how I think this might appear, like I can easily do so. So I might say, hey, it might be part number, or we might also have it show up as part NO with a period at the end. So that works. The other benefit is the fact that by default, our regular expression engine is case insensitive. So it doesn't matter if somebody wrote on the document in lowercase part number or in all uppercase part number, it's still going to use this. Now, how I'm going to make this so that it doesn't come up as a match is like so. So I'm going to go here, hit OK. Now I have my negative keyword list. And what I'm going to do is open up my SSN sensitive data definition, and I'm going to click the plus sign right here. And I'm going to first click the little ellipses, and I'm going to sort on the name, find my SSN negative keyword list, click that to the add, and then I'm going to switch the operator to less than. So now the way this definition is reading is that in order for a document or anything to be considered a match under this definition, it needs to have in the file or location at least 10 unique social security numbers, and it cannot have any of the words listed on this keyword list. So I can say, okay, perfect. And I click OK. And now when I use this as a recognizer for a future search, anything that's on that keyword list is not going to come up. So again, I can kind of feed in a bunch of different financial terminology, words, and things like that to help with this, but we'll open up another one. Let's see. Let's grab this one. Oh, let's find a better file. So we'll find, we'll pretend that this is one of the invoice files. So one of the comments was invoice. So what if I have a lot of invoices that are coming up? I like the word invoice because of the fact that it's not likely, and again, this is all kind of definitely talk this over with your teams, talk this over with your data governance team and your legal team. But I would say that it's a pretty good assumption that somebody's not going to put another individual's social on an invoice, on a document that contains the word invoice on it. So same type of thing. The way I'd handle that is I'd say, okay, well, I got to add another negative keyword here, and I don't need to mess with my definition anymore. That's kind of the beauty of setting this all up. All I need to do is if I had one keyword here, so we'll just kind of delete it back so it looks a little cleaner and easier to follow. If I wanted to add invoices to this, all I have to do is put everything in parentheses, like so. I'd go back one character and insert a pipe character. That makes it a Boolean statement. And then I could just type invoices in there, like so. And so that's my next word on my list. And then I could even prep it for the next one. And we could say budget, or we could say forecasting, and so forth and so forth. So you can just continuously add to this list, and you don't have to do anything more than that. And because this regular expression is already referenced in here, so I never have to mess with this sensitive data definition again. All I have to update are my negative keyword lists to continuously improve my recognizers under each format. So
That's
hopefully that
great.
makes sense to everybody. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
It certainly does make sense because there are a couple people that are like, "Oh my gosh, you've just saved me a lot of time." So that's great. There is one question that I think this is a great place to insert it.
Great.
Do you have any recommended tools that you use for building regular expressions?
Yes, lots of record tools. So I want to, and that's a good question. So the tool that I probably use the most is regex 101. It's my favorite for doing any type of regular expression building because on this page, so if you go to regex 101, it allows you to easily, there's a nice little cheat sheet on the right hand side. So it'll tell you exactly how to write different regular expressions and things like that. Um, the other ones that you could use are debug X. So X, I think is what it's called. Yeah, there it is, debug X. This one's nice because it allows you to see a visual. So if you're more a visual person, you can see this, what it looks like in a kind of a decision tree. So I can take this same regular expression and pop it right into here. If you're ever looking at the options, you want to set it to PCRE. And how this reads is now it kind of shows it as a pretty decision tree. So essentially, here's all the paths to make it a match. So it could be part number, it could be invoices, it could be budget, it could be forecasting. So you could put any of those words here and see that it's going to come up as a match. So those are the two that I use the most. And if you're trying to learn it, the best one that I have for you is regex1. Has the best online tutorial. It takes 15 minutes to do, and it will teach you the basics from beginning to end. So those would be the three different tools that I'd recommend to use. When you're doing regular expressions, it can be tempting to, so kind of as we're on the same vein is, it can be tempting to do things to get a little more clever, try to show that you are understanding of regular expressions. So I've had a lot of clients or things that will do things like this and add word boundaries in. What that allows you to do is make it so that it has to appear on its own. So let's say like a social security number is 9 digits long. If we leave it like this, there's some downsides to it because I'm going to add a really long number here and it's going to match. Basically each section of the number is going to match. If I put a word boundary around it, then the benefits is that only 9 digits numbers will actually match. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or that was 10, 9, this comes up as a match, but I would caution people to not do this. And that's why I'm explaining it, is that the downsides to doing word boundaries like this is the fact that if you are searching OCR data, you are going to make things more limiting than they possibly need to be. So keep that in mind when you're adding words here. Don't get too fancy with your regular expressions. You can keep them literally as the words themselves so that they have the best chance of not hitting. And if you're concerned about the example that I just showed you where you might have a need for, you don't want to match this like 4 different times essentially, then what you can do instead of using a word bounding like that, you could say, I typically use something like this. So, and I'll say, hey, that can appear 0 to 2 times. And that allows it so that it's more flexible for things that could be OCR'd. And I put that on both sides of it instead, saying, hey, yeah, I'll allow it so that it could show up 1 or more or 0 to 2 times in between. And that way it hopefully will allow for more flexibility so you can still catch the things that matter, but also reduce some false positives. So different ideas on that. Cool. So the other way that we would mitigate false positives, and this is the reason I like this way a lot, is it helps you handle a lot of different things at one time. So it takes care of a lot of false positives all at once, whereas the global ignore list is kind of like one at a time type of thing, unless we're doing matches. The other thing that you would typically use, or the other strategy that we strongly encourage clients to implement, is using the global exclusions. So global exclusions are a little different than the global ignore, because with ignore, we're still going to search those locations and still find the files, but with an exclusion, we're not even going to search that location. And you should have a global exclusion list by default when we implement your platform. But as a reminder, it's going to be under your base system policy and custom folders. So right here, we put, for the Spirion professional services team, we have a list of locations that we already kind of pre-populate with every implementation we do. And these are locations that we would, that we say don't search these because it can cause issues with the platform and stability in your guys' environment. So I would suggest keeping the same ones that you see here if you have them. And if you don't have them, reach out to us. We can definitely send you a list to populate. But if you wanted to, let's say you had a quarantine folder, and obviously you're quarantining sensitive files that you're finding on your file servers to this location, you're not going to want to search this location because you already know the data exists there. And the last thing you want to do is just report on it twice. So you might put your server name and the UNC path to the quarantine folder. So it might just be $C and your quarantine. And if you hit the green check mark, it's already set to default to exclude from all searches. So now the next time that you run a search, it's not going to even come up as a location that's going to be searched. So it'll just recognize, hey, that's on the global ignore list or the global exclusion list, and update your policies accordingly. So what I typically do for my clients is I'll usually change the name of the base system policy to something like global exclusions and base system policy. And I'll tell somebody, and this is helpful if you have multiple people logging into your console, to just tell people, hey, this is what this is for. So global exclusions should go under, and then I'd say something like search locations, custom folders. I've had a few clients ask me, hey, Kyle, is there any way that Spirion can audit when people are adding exclusions to that list? And unfortunately, the answer is no, not currently. It's a great feature request. But what you might do is have like a global exclusion Excel spreadsheet that you guys have created. And you might say, hey, if you add a location to the list, you need to update the file located at, and then you give the UNC path to the global exclusion like list that you guys have. So you might have something like this where you have a spreadsheet that's somewhere on a shared drive or something like that. That's called the Spirion global exclusions. You might paste different paths in here. So we'll just like say, hey, I just added a new path. So we'll go server, $C, quarantine. And you might have, another thing that says, hey, who's the person who added this? And it was me, Kyle Butler. And the date that I added it was 9/22/2020. So that way you guys can keep track of who's adding different things to the exclusions and the reasons why. So you might just have something like path, user, and date, and maybe notes. And we did it so that the quarantine file is not searched anymore, the directory is not searched anymore. So
Hey, Kyle,
yeah.
that lovely base system policy that you just showed, is that available to download?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not positive if we've actually posted that onto our knowledge base. If you
I
don't
don't
have it,
think that we have, but we can if you provide it. It is something that they can download and import, correct?
absolutely. So all this can be imported and exported. So
We'll
what
make
you
sure to
want.
send it out with this then.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is perfect. So those are kind of our basic ways to handle it. So I'm going to go through a couple different scenarios and kind of show you again a few of the ways that you might different things to think about when you're analyzing your results. Now, keep
And
in mind.
can I throw
Yeah.
one more thing before you do that? So something else that was asked, it was asked a while back. Been looking for a good way to put this in. This might be a good place. Somebody asked about how to reduce false negatives in, for example, passwords, right? So like a password, the AnyFind doesn't trigger on passwords in a password labeled column is what they're finding.
Uh,
So as you're talking about results, I thought you might have a
no,
place to work in talking about false negatives.
no, that's wonderful. So I will tell you, this will kind of bring us back to our AnyFind definitions, and optimizing AnyFind definitions. I'll kind of point out to people so that this is not intuitive and it's something you kind of just have to know. There's a couple, AnyFind definitions are not equal in the way that they're accurate and whatnot. So I can tell you, password by default's not a super great like out of the box recognizer. Is one that requires a lot of optimization to get to work right. In fact, the way that I usually handle it is I use a sensitive data definition. So I would create a sensitive data definition specifically to handle something like password. Um, and I would kind of work it from there rather than try to use my AnyFind here. But if you are like seeing false positives or false negatives, I should say, keep in mind that password is going to have a higher rate of false negatives. The other one that I want to point out as being one that I would caution people on is health info. So health info is kind of a special AnyFind definition because it's really not configured out of the box. It's the precursor to sensitive data definitions. So in my mind, health info is also one of those AnyFind definitions that's easier to solve with a sensitive data definition. So I'll kind of walk through how I would create a health info sensitive data definition and also a password sensitive data definition, because those are both ones that you will see a lot of false positives and false negatives with. So how do we handle that? So for something like password, it can be really simple. So I'd start off with a regular expression, and I would say something like this. I'd go a dash password, and this is going to be part one. And I'm just going to say this is a regex. And the first thing that I would do is think of a list of keywords that would show up for passwords. So something like this, password or PW, or that's the only two that I can think of. So I might put that there. And then if I knew that my organization has a standard, strength or something like that with the password, we could get really creative. But realistically, this word on its own is probably enough. And we might actually throw another thing in there. So we might also say, okay, we'll make a part two. So we'll go password. And we'll say part two. And then we'll say regex so that we know not to use this on its own. And we might say something, what else is going to appear with password? Well, probably something like username, right? Or user. And then to create the definition, all I'm going to do is just add the two together in a sensitive data definition and go, okay, this is the password sensitive data definition. And I'm going to say, if a document contains the words password or PW greater than or equal to at least one total match, because they're not really unique. And it also contains the other keyword, username, that I'm interested in looking at it for passwords, because I think there's a high likelihood that a password exists in that file. Now, this one on its own is going to throw a lot of false positives, because literally any document that contains username and password. So it's going to be important that I have my negative keyword list. So the first time I turn this on, I wouldn't go crazy with this and try to search like my largest file server. I might just search a small file like server or small directory on that file server to kind of get an idea, but I already know, hey, I'm going to be improving this constantly, so I might as well make a password, and this will be my negative keyword list. And so as I'm reviewing those files, I can add to this and put the things in that I'm like, oh, yep, that one definitely is not a password. So it might be something like user manual, right? Because the words password and username are probably going to come up in user manual and things like that. So, and again, the way we'd add that in is I'd go back to that password sensitive data definition. And this is a one-time operation. And I'm just going to click from the operator and say, and my password negative keyword list, and it has to be less than 1 total matches, like so. So that's a pretty good start. And again, I would say that typically what I've seen is after 3 searches using a recognizer like this, by that third search, you're probably hitting above a 95% accuracy rate if you are reviewing your results and going through it. Now, that is the importance of, hopefully you had time to see our last webinar where we talked about how to create reports and things like that. But that's where this becomes really handy, is to handle different things. When you're analyzing your data, the things that to attack first is don't try to eat the elephant all at once, but look for patterns. So if I'm looking at these results, what I would look for is the high concentrations of files that are named the same. So right here, what I might do is, since these are all the same file, this is easy, but a lot of times what you'll find when you're reviewing your results is there'll be higher concentrations of files, and you'll see similar files all named in the same spot. So those are the ones that I would tackle first. And the way I do it and the way I teach it in our implementations is that we always create a report. And as we're going through the report, we're just validating a few of the results. We don't need to validate everything. We just want to validate a few of them. And we might say, okay, so that document was true positives. That's great. And this document, we found the word invoice in front of. And let's pretend that all these other documents were the exact same, like just different variations of that same invoice. So what I might do is I might pull up a note or just a simple text document, and I might make a quick note as I'm reviewing my report. I wouldn't go back and forth between the console, but I might say something like, hey, if you see a file that, we'll just do this, new, save, sure. So I might say, hey, I need to update the CCN recognizer, and I'm going to use the word invoice as a negative keyword. And then I might add it onto this, hey, these set of locations are also the locations that I'm going to add to my ignore list. So these are my ignore list locations. So just something really simple where I can kind of reference it. And I might say these are add to ignore. And I just use kind of scratch paper as I'm doing that. And I try to find like a good concentration of files that look the same or kind of the same variation. There'll be certain files I don't need to validate because I'll just see somebody's name and it will say something like W2 in it. So I don't even need to click into that. But then I would take this list and go back to my console and just kind of look at it. As far as, a lot of times I'll shift it to the side like that and go like this, and oh, I didn't have my console up. So I'll do the same thing. There we go, like that. And I'll just go here and I'll say, all right, so now I'm gonna improve or optimize my recognizers. I have a couple of different files I need to add to my global ignore list under the match location. I have a few that I need to add under a negative keyword. So I'll go to my admin and I'll say, okay, so sensitive data types, We need to improve this one off of the Social Security negative. And we'll just keep building and adding as we are doing this. This is a constant process, but as you've done this like 3 or 4 times, searching like representative data of your environment, you should see, if you're doing it the way that I'm suggesting, you should see great returns where all of a sudden you'll be opening up your reports and realizing, hey, I don't really need to verify any of this because I can tell you that just by looking at it, these are the positives or these are the things that we care about. So I'll just add invoice here like so, okay, and so forth. So to kind of review with everyone on the call, the 4 different strategies we just talked about. We talked about our using the global ignore list for matches and why that might be important. We use the matches typically to handle things like phone numbers, company phone numbers, company addresses, and things like that. So you might just add that. When you're doing it, remember the global ignore list lives in the admin tab under the global ignore lists location, and you can continuously add lists. There's one other note I forgot to mention. So creating the ignore list doesn't actually do anything by default, but in order to get it to work, what you need to do is go to your base system policy again, go to global ignore lists right here, and all you're going to do is check both of these. So this allows it so that it's referenced in every single search, regardless of the searches that are being run. Both of these ignore lists are applied. If that's not done, then the global ignore list won't do anything. So sorry, I forgot to mention that. So you have to add this, enable this in policy to make sure. We also talked about adding location lists, so different locations that we just would want to ignore. This is really nice for like one-offs that are difficult to find, like maybe a keyword that you're comfortable with putting on as a negative keyword. So if you're kind of stumped on that, this is a good option. Remember, the downside to this though is that if the file changes location, then it will still come back as a match. So keep that in mind with your location global ignore lists. We talked about your any-find definitions and how to optimize those, and how to optimize your any-find definitions are going to be underneath the settings on your base system policy, identities, and you can go to each one of these under the any-find options. It'll allow you to set different parameters around each of the any-find definitions and so forth. So you can put that here. Date of birth is a really good one to take a look at. That's going to allow you to set like what the range of birth dates can be. So like the highest day, highest month, lowest year, lowest month, and so forth. That helps eliminate a lot of false positives under this recognizer. And the last way that we talked about, or the 2 other ways that we talked about, were adding things to the global exclusion list that would live underneath your base system policy. So we can go to custom folders right here and add different paths that we don't think should be searched at all, like your quarantine folders, or if there's a place in your environment that it's okay for employees to store sensitive data because you've checked the access controls and your team feels it's secure, then of course add it to here, because our platform was designed to help you locate data, sensitive data, where you didn't think it was, but not necessarily, there's not really a reason to search a location if you know that sensitive data is there. So the last way we talked about was using sensitive data definitions and how that's a constant optimization. And my suggestion would always be to people that if you're using any find definitions, to try to transition to sensitive data definitions, because you can do more with it. And we talked about creating a negative keyword list and then associating it with the definition. So just kind of a quick review so you can kind of see that. And where you'd have something like the any find definition right here and your negative keywords. So those are the 4 different ways that we would encourage you to mitigate your false positives. And if you put this into practice early, you can see tremendous gains on your false positive rates really quickly. So it just takes a little bit of legwork to do that. But analyzing the results is an important part to the process. So that's all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take the last 6 minutes to answer those. But thanks so much for taking the time to work with me today.
Kyle, the questions that had come up in the Q&A panel, you answered as we went along, and I just made sure to point those out to people. So that's great. We can give everybody a minute or so just to see if anyone else has any other questions that they're typing. I did just want to tell you that there are a lot of people saying thank you. A couple of people that said you're saving me a lot of time.
Oh, good. That's the goal of
Um,
these.
yep. Somebody asked if this session is recorded, so why don't I turn it over to you, Marissa, to close us out.
Hi, guys. Yes, the session is recorded. We will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow with not only a link to the recording, but the download base, and I'm forgetting the right word for that. One of the deliverables that you asked for, we'll send a
Base
download
system
as
policy.
base
Yep.
system policy. We'll send that to you in addition to a cheat sheet.
Perfect. Cool. So we are doing 2 more webinars, one in October and another one in November. We're also planning one possibly for December. So if people have ideas, feel free to shoot them our way. But October 20th, we're going to be covering sensitive data definitions. And November 17th, we're going to be doing classifications. And that kind of brings us to our final screen, which is the thank you. And if you guys have questions after this that we didn't answer on this webinar and you'd like some more information about, feel free to email any one of us and we should be able to get back to you as soon as possible. Or you can email your customer success managers. We have their emails provided on the screen, and I'll just kind of wait out the last 4 minutes. And if anybody else has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
All the other questions that I have are questions that we can follow up offline. So they're more specific to people that are asked on there. With one exception, they asked if there's a knowledge base article that talks about creating complex sensitive data definitions. Rather than answer this yes or no right now, what I'll do is, Marissa, can we add a link to the knowledge base that talks about creating complex sensitive data definitions to our follow-up tomorrow?
Absolutely.
I'll find that link for you and provide it.
Awesome. And we
Everything
are going
else,
to
yep, we'll
cover
follow up
sensitive data
tomorrow.
definitions on the 20th. So if you want, we can
Yay.
definitely get into more complex ideas on sensitive data definitions then.
Shameless
So,
plug.
yep. Great. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to helping you out, and good luck with your Spirion implementation.